Have you ever noticed how the first few hours of your day seem to set the tone for everything that follows? Your energy, your mood, even the choices you make later in the day often begin with what happens before 10 a.m. And surprisingly, many people spend years focusing on dinner while completely overlooking the morning. That may be one of the biggest missed opportunities for long term heart wellness. This video is for educational purposes and is not a substitute for personal medical advice because everyone's health needs are different. Stay with me until the end because some foods that seem healthy in the morning may actually work against the goals many people have for their heart. And later, you'll see why one simple habit before breakfast matters more than most people realize. But first, let's understand why those early hours matter so much, because what happens inside your body before 10 a.m. can influence the rest of the day. Think of your body like a car engine that has been parked overnight. It has been resting for hours. When morning arrives, your body needs quality fuel, not just something quick to silence hunger. Organizations like Harvard Health, the Mayo Clinic, and the NIH have consistently emphasized the importance of overall eating patterns and lifestyle habits for cardiovascular health. The foods you choose early in the day can support stable energy and encourage better decisions later on. Many people make the mistake of skipping breakfast entirely and then becoming extremely hungry by lunchtime. What often follows is overeating or reaching for heavily processed foods. A better approach is to think about the morning as a chance to build a strong foundation. And in a moment, I'll explain why one common breakfast item might not be as satisfying as people expect. One of the best foods to include before 10 a.m. is oats. It sounds simple, almost too simple. Yet simple foods often deliver lasting benefits. Oats contain fiber that acts almost like a sponge inside the digestive system. Imagine a slow burning log in a fireplace instead of a handful of paper that burns in seconds. That's how oats work. They release energy gradually rather than all at once. Many people make the mistake of choosing sugary cereals that create a quick burst of energy followed by a crash. An oat based breakfast with natural ingredients tends to keep people feeling satisfied longer. Pairing oats with a balanced lifestyle, regular movement, and quality sleep creates a pattern that supports overall wellness. But oats become even more interesting when you see what happens when berries join the picture, and that's where many people are pleasantly surprised. Colorful berries are another morning favorite worth considering. Blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, and blackberries add sweetness without requiring large amounts of added sugar. Think of them as nature's colorful toolbox. According to information commonly discussed by organizations like the Cleveland Clinic and Harvard Health, eating a variety of fruits is part of an overall heart-friendly lifestyle. Unfortunately, some people assume fruit juice is the same thing as whole fruit, but whole berries bring fiber and texture that juice simply doesn't provide. A bowl of oats topped with berries creates a combination that many people enjoy because it feels satisfying and refreshing. The mistake people often make is relying on sweet pastries instead, which may leave them hungry again sooner than expected. And speaking of combinations, there's another breakfast partner that works surprisingly well with berries, and it may already be sitting in your refrigerator. Plain yogurt can be another valuable part of the morning routine. Think of it as a teammate rather than the star player. On its own, it can be simple. Combined with fruit, nuts, or oats, it becomes much more satisfying. The key mistake many people make is choosing flavored versions packed with added sugars. Reading labels and keeping things simple often helps. Morning eating patterns don't need to be complicated. In fact, complicated plans are often the hardest to maintain. Consistency matters more than perfection. Sleep also plays a role. Someone who sleeps poorly may wake up craving highly processed foods. Good sleep and good food often work together, like two wheels on the same bicycle. But there is another group of foods that can add crunch and satisfaction, and later you'll see why even small amounts can make a difference. Nuts and seeds may be small, but they pack an impressive amount of flavor and texture. Almonds, walnuts, chia seeds, and flax seeds are easy additions to breakfast. Picture them like tiny workers helping build a stronger foundation. They don't need to dominate the meal. They simply complement it. Many people mistakenly think healthy eating means removing everything enjoyable, but adding nourishing foods often matters more than focusing on restriction. This content is intended for general education and should never replace personalized guidance from a healthcare professional. Long term heart wellness depends on many factors, including physical activity, stress management, sleep, and overall eating habits. Instead of chasing perfection, think about creating routines you can realistically maintain. And now we arrive at one of the most overlooked morning habits that has nothing to do with fancy ingredients. Because sometimes the simplest changes create the biggest differences. Hydration is often forgotten. After hours without drinking, the body wakes up needing fluids. Imagine trying to water a garden after leaving it dry overnight. Your body appreciates replenishment in much the same way. Many people immediately reach for sugary drinks and never think twice about water. Starting the day with water before enjoying breakfast can become a simple routine. No complicated schedule, no expensive products, just consistency. Stress also matters more than people realize. Rushing through breakfast while feeling anxious can turn eating into an afterthought. Slowing down and eating mindfully often helps people enjoy food more and recognize when they are comfortably full. But here's where things become really interesting, because one breakfast mistake has quietly become normal for millions of people. Highly processed pastries and sugary breakfast foods may seem convenient, but convenience isn't always the same as nourishment. Think about the difference between building a house with sturdy materials versus temporary cardboard walls. One lasts, one struggles. Many people begin the day with sweet foods that provide short lived satisfaction. A better alternative is creating balance with foods that include fiber, natural ingredients, and variety. The NHS and other trusted organizations frequently emphasize overall dietary patterns rather than single superfoods. That's important because no single food can do all the work. Lifestyle is a team effort. Movement matters, sleep matters, stress matters, food matters. And soon you'll see why one everyday habit after breakfast may be just as important as what is on the plate. A short walk after breakfast is something many people overlook. It doesn't need to become an intense workout. Think of it as giving your body a gentle signal that the day has begun. Movement and food work together like dance partners. When one improves, the other often follows. People sometimes believe health changes require huge sacrifices, but sustainable routines usually come from small actions repeated consistently. Even stretching, gardening, or light activity contributes to a more active lifestyle. And coming up next, we're going to uncover one breakfast item that people often consider healthy, but that deserves a closer look because appearances can sometimes be misleading. Many breakfast products wear a healthy disguise. Packages may feature pictures of fruit, grains, or words like natural and wholesome. But sometimes the reality inside the box tells a different story. This is why many people are surprised when they discover that some breakfast bars, flavored yogurts, and cereals contain large amounts of added sugars. Think of it like judging a book by its cover. The outside may look impressive, but the real story is inside. A common mistake people make is assuming that anything marketed as healthy automatically deserves a place on the breakfast table. Instead, focusing on simple, recognizable ingredients often makes choices easier. And speaking of simple foods, there is one morning favorite that has been enjoyed for generations. And later, you'll see why pairing it correctly makes all the difference. Eggs remain a popular breakfast choice for many people around the world. They are versatile, easy to prepare, and fit into many different eating styles. But the real story is not just about the eggs themselves. It's about what people eat with them. A breakfast built around heavily processed meats, refined breads, and sugary drinks creates a very different pattern than one combined with vegetables, fruit, and whole grains. Think of breakfast like a team. One player alone doesn't win the game. Everyone contributes. That's why trusted organizations like Harvard Health and the Mayo Clinic often focus on dietary patterns rather than individual foods. People sometimes search for one magical ingredient while ignoring the bigger picture. And that bigger picture becomes even more interesting when we talk about one green food that many people forget exists before lunchtime. Avocados have become increasingly popular, and for good reason. Their creamy texture and satisfying flavor make them easy to include in the morning. Think of them as nature's spread. Many people replace heavily processed toppings with sliced avocado on whole grain toast, or add it to eggs and vegetables. But mistakes happen when people believe healthy eating has to be expensive or complicated. A heart conscious lifestyle isn't about perfection or luxury, it is about patterns repeated over time. Stress, lack of sleep, and constantly eating on the run can make healthy choices harder. That's why building routines matters. And in a moment, I'll explain why one drink many people rely on every morning deserves a balanced approach rather than an all or nothing mindset. Coffee often sparks debate. Some people love it, others avoid it completely. But here's something interesting: the issue isn't always coffee itself, it's what sometimes comes with it. Think about how quickly cream, flavored syrups, sugary additions, and oversized servings can transform a simple beverage into something entirely different. Many people make the mistake of treating coffee like dessert. A more balanced approach is often easier to maintain. The same applies to tea. Healthy routines usually succeed because they are realistic, not extreme. The problem with extremes is that they rarely last. And speaking of things that don't last, there is one morning habit that leaves many people hungry again before noon. Skipping protein entirely at breakfast is more common than many realize. Someone may grab a sweet pastry, drink coffee, and rush out the door. By mid morning, hunger returns with full force. Imagine trying to heat your home with a matchstick instead of a steady fire. That's the difference between quick energy and lasting satisfaction. Adding foods like yogurt, eggs, nuts, seeds, or other wholesome choices can help create a breakfast that feels more complete. The mistake isn't necessarily eating too much. Often it's eating foods that don't keep people satisfied for very long. But breakfast isn't only about food. There is another factor that quietly affects choices all day long, and most people underestimate its power. Stress has a way of influencing everything. When people feel rushed, anxious, or overwhelmed, they often reach for convenience. Fast choices become attractive. Sweet foods become comforting. Healthy intentions disappear. Think of stress like background noise that slowly distracts from better decisions. This is why simple routines matter. Even taking a few quiet minutes in the morning can create a completely different start to the day. A calm breakfast eaten without distractions often feels more satisfying than one eaten while scrolling endlessly on a phone. And later, you'll see why sleep may be the hidden ingredient that connects all these pieces together. Poor sleep changes more than mood. It influences hunger, energy, and cravings. Imagine trying to drive a car with low fuel and dim headlights. Everything becomes harder. People who consistently sleep poorly may find themselves reaching for sugary foods simply because they need quick energy. According to organizations such as the NIH and the Cleveland Clinic, healthy living involves much more than diet alone. Sleep, movement, stress management, and food choices all work together. The mistake many people make is trying to fix everything with a single food while ignoring the habits surrounding it. But speaking of habits, there is one morning ritual practiced in some of the world's longest living communities that might surprise you. People living in areas often referred to as blue zones tend to emphasize simple foods and consistent routines. Their meals are not built around extremes. Instead, they focus on variety, plants, movement, and enjoying food with intention. Think of health like a savings account. Small deposits made consistently over years create meaningful results. People often search for dramatic transformations, but everyday habits usually matter far more. This approach removes pressure and replaces it with sustainability. And that leads us to one food group that many people unnecessarily fear. Whole grains have been unfairly misunderstood by some people. Yet foods like oatmeal and whole grain bread have long been part of balanced eating patterns. The key difference lies in choosing less processed forms whenever possible. Think of whole grains as slow burning fuel rather than quick burning paper. Many people make the mistake of assuming all carbohydrates are the same. They aren't. Context matters. Portion sizes matter. Overall lifestyle matters. And perhaps most importantly, consistency matters. But there is one colorful breakfast edition that can bring even more variety to the morning, and many people overlook it because they associate it only with lunch or dinner. Vegetables at breakfast may sound unusual to some, but adding tomatoes, spinach, mushrooms, peppers, or other colorful options can make meals more satisfying and interesting. Think of colors on the plate like tools in a toolbox. Variety matters. The mistake many people make is believing vegetables belong only later in the day. In reality, breakfast can become another opportunity to enjoy them. Small changes repeated consistently often become powerful habits. And coming up next, we'll uncover one surprising mistake that causes many people to sabotage healthy intentions without even realizing it. One of the biggest mistakes people make has nothing to do with choosing the wrong food. It is relying too heavily on willpower. Motivation comes and goes. Busy mornings happen, life becomes unpredictable. Think of willpower like a phone battery. It drains throughout the day. Habits, however, are different. Habits work quietly in the background. That's why preparing simple breakfast ingredients ahead of time can make healthy choices easier. A bowl of oats, a handful of berries, some nuts, or plain yogurt waiting in the refrigerator removes the stress of making decisions while rushing out the door. People often believe they need more discipline, when what they really need is a system. And in a moment, I'll explain why one common weekend habit can quietly undo good intentions during the week. Many people eat differently on weekends. Sleep schedules change, breakfast is skipped, fast food becomes more common. Suddenly, Monday arrives, and everything feels out of balance. Imagine trying to build a bridge while removing pieces every few days. Consistency matters because the body appreciates routines. That doesn't mean life has to be rigid. Flexibility is important. Enjoying favorite foods occasionally is part of a realistic lifestyle. The mistake comes when occasional habits become everyday habits. A better approach is aiming for progress rather than perfection. And speaking of perfection, there is another misunderstanding that keeps many people frustrated for years. Healthy eating is not supposed to feel like punishment, yet many people approach food with guilt and fear. They divide foods into categories of good and bad, and then feel disappointed whenever life becomes messy. But life is messy. Think of healthy living like steering a ship. Small corrections over time keep the ship moving in the right direction. One meal doesn't determine the future, and neither does one unhealthy choice. Trusted organizations like the WHO, NHS, and Harvard Health consistently emphasize overall patterns rather than perfection. This perspective helps remove unnecessary stress, and surprisingly, reducing stress itself may support healthier decisions. But there is one morning behavior many people perform automatically without ever questioning it. Eating too quickly has become normal. Breakfast is often consumed while checking emails, watching television, or scrolling through social media. Imagine trying to appreciate a beautiful song while standing beside a loud construction site. Distractions take away from the experience. Slowing down and paying attention to meals can help people recognize satisfaction more naturally. This simple habit also transforms breakfast from something rushed into something enjoyable. The mistake isn't always what people eat, sometimes it's how they eat. And later, you'll see why one simple activity after breakfast can create benefits that extend far beyond the kitchen. Sunlight and movement are powerful partners. Stepping outside for a few minutes in the morning, taking a walk, or simply stretching can help establish a positive rhythm for the day. Think of the body like an orchestra. Sleep, food, movement, and stress management all need to play together. If one section falls behind, the music becomes less balanced. People often underestimate the value of these small actions because they seem too simple. But simple does not mean unimportant. In fact, some of the most powerful habits are also the least complicated. And that brings us to one surprising factor that affects breakfast choices more than most people realize. Loneliness and social connection influence health habits in ways that are easy to overlook. People who share meals with family or friends often find greater enjoyment and consistency. Food has always been more than fuel. It creates memories and brings people together. Think of breakfast as an opportunity not just to nourish the body, but also to connect with others whenever possible. Even a brief conversation can change the mood of an entire morning. The mistake many people make is focusing only on nutrients while forgetting the importance of daily routines and relationships. And speaking of routines, there is one pattern observed again and again among people who successfully maintain healthy lifestyles. Successful habits are usually boring, not because they are unpleasant, but because they are consistent. People who maintain long term wellness often repeat simple behaviors. They don't chase every trend. They don't constantly start over. They understand that health is built one day at a time. Think of a brick wall. One brick doesn't create much, but thousands of bricks placed consistently create something strong. Breakfast before 10 a.m. becomes one of those bricks. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be part of a pattern. And now we arrive at something that surprises many people. There is no single superfood for the heart, no magic ingredient, no secret formula. According to respected organizations such as the NIH, Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, and Harvard Health, long-term wellness comes from patterns, variety, movement, sleep, stress management, relationships, and yes, nourishing foods. Oats, berries, nuts, seeds, plain yogurt, eggs, whole grains, vegetables, and other wholesome choices can all play a role, but they work best when combined with healthy routines rather than viewed as isolated solutions. People often search for extraordinary answers while overlooking ordinary habits, yet ordinary habits practiced consistently become extraordinary over time. And before we finish, there is one final message that might matter more than anything else discussed today. Your body is not asking for perfection. It is asking for consistency. It is asking for kindness. It is asking for routines that you can maintain not for a week, but for years. Think of every morning as a new opportunity rather than a test you must pass. Some days will be better than others. That is normal. What matters most is returning to habits that support your long-term well-being. Because healthy living isn't about fear. It isn't about chasing impossible standards. It is about creating a life that feels sustainable, enjoyable, and balanced. So tomorrow morning, before 10 a.m., ask yourself one simple question. How can I take care of myself today? Maybe the answer is a bowl of oatmeal with berries. Maybe it's drinking water first thing in the morning. Maybe it's sitting down and enjoying breakfast without rushing. Maybe it's taking a short walk afterward. Whatever the answer, remember that small choices repeated consistently can shape the years ahead. And if you found value in today's video, make sure to stay with this channel because there are many more simple habits and everyday strategies that can help support healthy aging, mobility, energy, and quality of life. And one future video may completely change the way you think about your morning routine.